Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with a new series. We're going to look at Bobby Fischer 11 wins out of 11 games in the 1963-1964 US Championships. It had not been done before and it has not been done since. We know that Fischer has more perfect events to his name. What springs to mind is his candidates matches on his way to the World Championship against Mark Taimanov and Bent Larsen, which he both won with 6 wins out of 6 games. We might continue the series with those matches, but first we're going to look at his famous 11 out of 11 in the US Championships. So the series will be of 11 videos, 1 per week. We're going to look at all Fischer's 11 games from that tournament. Fischer took part 8 times in the US Championships and he won them all. The first one at the age of 14 in 1957-58. When he won 8 games, no losses and 5 draws. He again won the year after that, and also in 60-61 when he was 17. As you can see, then he skipped 1 year, won again in 62-63, and then this famous 11 out of 11 in 63-64. For the 7th time he won the US Championship in 1965, and for the last time in 66-67. And it is this 6th championship in red there that we're going to focus at in this video. Here we have the final table of that event. Larry Evans finished 3.5 points behind in 2nd place, followed by Paul Banco, Reshevsky, and you can see the other participants of that event. All the strongest US chess players at the time. And Bobby Fischer beat them all. In the first round, which was played on the 15th of December 1963, Fischer had the black pieces, so we're going to look at his game from the black side, from Fischer's side. His opponent was Edmar Mednis, who was born on March 22nd, 1937 and passed away on February 13th, 2002 at the age of 64. A great age to pass away for a chess player. Fischer also died at the age of 64. Mednis was of Latvian origin. His family were refugees in 1944 during World War II. As displaced persons, Edmar and his 2 sisters and parents were permitted to emigrate to the United States in 1950. Mednis was trained as a chemical engineer, then worked as a stockbroker, but became best known as a chess author, writing a total of 26 chess books. Mednis finished 2nd in the 1955 World Junior Championship, behind Boris Spassky. And he also was the first player to ever beat Bobby Fischer in a US Championship. That was in 1962. Mednis became a Grandmaster in 1980. In this game, the first round of the 63-64 US Championship, he played e4 against Fischer. And Fischer answered e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4 and bishop c5. We have the Giuco piano of the Italian game. We followed the main line for a while. d4, getting a strong center, e takes, c takes, attacking the bishop. Bishop gave check. Knight c3 is a very common move, and so is bishop d2. Fischer took, knight takes, and now knight takes e4. No, Bobby Fischer is not blundering a piece. If you take that piece, then there is d5 with a fork, winning the piece back. A very known way to play. After knight takes e4, Mednis did not take the knight. He played queen e2, pinning the knight because the king is still in the center. d5, protecting the knight. And now did Mednis take on e4. Fischer castled, decides not to regain the piece straight away. He castles first, and Mednis castles as well. On the queen side, opposite castling, always exciting. Bishop g4, Fischer still not takes one of these pieces. A famous saying in chess is that the threat is more dangerous than the execution. Mednis will constantly have to think about which piece Fischer is going to take. h3 for Mednis, and Fischer decides to take on f3. And if you want to keep your pawn structure intact, you want to take with the queen, but then there is d takes c4, and white will not get the c4 pawn back, which is an important pawn, and it can do some damage to white's king position. And that's why Mednis took with the pawn. Now Fischer decides it's time to regain the piece. He takes the bishop, Queen takes c4, queen h4, king stepped aside, and queen f4, attacking the f3 pawn. Magnus is not defending that pawn, he plays d5. Magnus goes into action. Hitting the knight, knight goes to e5, hitting the queen, and the queen takes on c7. Rook a to c8, hitting the queen, and queen takes b7 is possible, but it's understandable that Magnus did not want to open up lines against his own king. He didn't take on b7, he played queen d6. And now we see a move repetition. Rook cd8, queen c7, rook back and queen back. But Fischer decides to decline the move repetition and plays rook f2 d8 here. Magnus would have been satisfied with a draw, understandably, against the favorite of the tournament, the 5-time champion. Queen e7, and knight takes f3, regaining the pawn. But white is better here, says the engine. Magnus plays d6, and the big question here, is this pawn weak or is it strong? The answer to that question determines who is better in this position. Fischer goes back to e5 with the knight, and rook h2 e1, centralizing the rook. Yes, white is better. Here the engine gives rook b8 to protect the b7 pawn. Not a great move, having to make a move like that. Instead, Fischer makes an even worse move. He plays rook d7, and that is a blunder, because Magnus could have won here. There's something odd. I have researched this game on the internet and in several chess books on Fischer that I have, and every publication gives knight c5 here as the strongest move. But my engine gives another move as much stronger than this. After rook d7, my engine says rook d5 wins, just ignoring the attack from black on white's queen. Why is this a good move? Well, for starters, it is threatening to win a piece. That knight is now attacked twice and only defended once. So you really have to take the queen. Rook takes e7. Then there is d takes e7 with the threat of rook d8. Rook takes and d takes e8 would be checkmate if white promotes to a rook or a queen. So after d takes e7, there is knight c6, the best move according to the engine. But then knight d6, attacking the rook and renewing the threat of promotion. The engine gives knight takes e7 as the best option, knight takes c8 taking that rook, and now you cannot take the knight to gain material because this is checkmate. The other rook to the 8th rank would also have been checkmate. So after knight takes c8 you have to do something about your back rank, g6 or h6. And then rook takes e7, queen takes f2, the dust has settled and white has a winning position with his extra material. 2 rooks and a knight against the queen. Yes, black has 2 extra pawns, but this is a winning position for white. So in this position, rook d7 played in the game. A mistake from Fischer. The refutation is rook d5. But Magnus did not see it. He also did not play knight c5, as I said, that was given in some publications. He played queen g5. The queens were swapped. And f6, defending the knight, which was attacked on e5, and also attacking white's knight. Knight e4, knight g6, rook c1, those rooks were swapped. And Fischer played b6. Rook c7. And the only move, knight f8, protecting the rook. The position is equal, but white is very comfortable. His pieces are more active than black's. Magnus is activating his king, king c2, Fischer as well, king c3 and king e6. Rook c8 hitting the knight, knight went to g6. The king gets centralized and h6. Fischer wants to play f5 and wants to avoid that knight jumping to g5. Rook e8 check, king f7, rook back, and knight f4. Fischer still does not want to repeat moves. Attacking the h-pawn, so h4 was played, g6, rook h8 attacking the h-pawn, and f5 hitting the knight. And this is a very important moment where on move 38, Magnus must have been low on time and he did not find the strongest idea here. If he had played king e5, this game would most likely have ended in a draw. It holds the balance, even though at first sight it looks like a mistake. Because there is knight d3 check. It is check and your knight is still hanging. And don't go to d4 because then there is f takes e4. Protecting the knight, black wins. But there is king d5, very nice move. And the tactical justification of white's idea. Because if you now take the piece, then there is rook h7 check, very nice. The king has to go to e8, protecting the rook. And then we do have a move repetition. The only way for black to avoid losing his rook. So all this after f5 and then king e5. But that is not easy to find in time trouble. In the game, Madness played rook h7 check. He's going to trade rooks to a knight endgame, and this turns out to be not the right decision for white. King e6, rook takes, king takes, and knight c3. Black is better in this endgame. He's taking the pawn, but white will regain the pawn on a7. This is a fork. King d7 and knight takes. 4 pawns each in a knight endgame. Knight g2 hitting the h-pawn. King e5 and black wins a pawn. King f4. This is a very complicated endgame and Fischer now outplays Madness. He plays g5 check and king g3. King e5 is the only way to fight, even though also then black is better. But after king g3, white's king becomes too passive. Now g6, a4. White has to do something on the queen side. Always push the potential passed pawn first. He has to make a passed pawn there to get counterplay. But as we'll see, he won't get there, because black is too quick on the other side. f4 check, king g2 and g4. Black is making much quicker progress with his passed pawns. Fischer now has a winning position and shows his flawless technique. Let's have a look. Knight b5, knight e5, knight c3. King goes up and b4. White wants to play a5 and get his passed pawn rolling. Knight c6, hitting the b4 pawn. f3. h5, protecting the g4 pawn. And b5, you have no option. You can't give your b4 pawn away. And defending it passively with the knight also doesn't work. The knight has done a good job on the queen side and now returns to e5. F takes, h takes, these pawns are very strong. King f2, knight d3 check, and king g2. They say you should evaluate knight endgames like pawn endgames, and it's clear that without the knights on the board this would be a very easy win for black. Knight c5, king f1, king f5, king g2, king e5, king f2 and knight d3 check. King e2, g3, and if you now take the knight, then there is g2, threatening to promote. You can only prevent promotion with knight e2, but then f3, knight g1 and f2, and black will promote and will win this game. So after g3, Madness did not take the knight. He played king f3, desperately trying to stop those pawns. But knight e1 check, king e2 and g2. Again, you cannot take the knight because of promotion. So king f2 was played and then f3 was the last move of the game. Fischer was able to win this knight endgame without his king even crossing the halfway line. Let's look at one variation. How does Fischer bring the point home? Why did Madness resign? Let's say king g1, then the knight gets rerouted to the other side of the board. Knight d1 for example, knight f4, king f2 and knight h3 check, covering the g1 square, and the black pawn will promote. That's just one variation, but there was no way for white to prevent something like that with one of the black pawns promoting. So Fischer had chalked up the first win, but it did not go all automatically. He was at one stage even in danger of losing. In round 2 he would have the white pieces against his friend Larry Evans, who in the end finished as the runner-up. And that game is the subject of the next video in the series. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you like this idea for a series. I don't think it has been done anywhere else on YouTube. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.